All right, today we're pulling back the digital curtain. We're going to unpack the super sophisticated playbook that researchers are using to solve a whole new kind of crime, the digital investment heist.
So how do you solve a crime like that? I mean, really think about it. This isn't some hypothetical riddle. It's the huge, central challenge facing investigators right now, and it frames the problem perfectly, right? This isn't your typical crime scene. It's a modern-day mystery, and cracking it means we have to think in a completely new way.
The crime is digital investment fraud, and the detectives, well, they're researchers. So let's join these high-tech sleuths on the case. By the end of this, you're going to have a fantastic inside look at the cutting-edge toolkit they use to crack these incredibly complex digital crimes.
First up, the digital heist. You know, every investigation has to start at the scene of the crime, but in the 21st century, that scene, it looks nothing like what you'd expect.
Yeah. Forget bank vaults with alarms and guards. The modern crime scene is on your phone. It's on WhatsApp, Telegram, those digital trading apps. It's happening on the platforms we all use and trust every single day. Scammers have turned these familiar places into their personal hunting grounds, and they are masters at making it all feel completely safe and legitimate, right up until the moment they strike.
Okay, so the crime scene is digital. Where does an investigator even start? Well, you start with the most important element of all, the human one. You've got to talk to the witnesses. In this case, that means the victims. You have to understand what happened from their point of view.
Listen to this. It all felt so real. The group chats, the prophets, I trusted them. That quote, man, it just hits you, right? It gets right to the heart of the problem. These aren't just financial crimes, not at all. They are deep, deep psychological manipulations. That feeling of reality, the social pressure from all those other people in the group chats, the promise of easy money, it's all part of a very carefully built trap.
So, how do you capture these very human stories? Well, investigators have specific tools for this. They use what are called qualitative methods. Basically, this means things like really in-depth interviews with victims or focus groups. They're digging for the why behind a person's choices. They even analyze the actual scam messages, treating them like digital evidence to figure out exactly how the scammers operate.
All right, so after getting those personal stories, the investigators need to zoom out. They need to see the bigger picture. They switch from focusing on the why to the what and how many. It's time to start analyzing the digital footprints. We're talking about the hard data left behind by thousands, maybe even millions of users.
And you really need to understand this difference, because it's crucial. On one hand, you have the qualitative clues. That's the why. It gives you the motivations, the personal stories. On the other hand, you have quantitative evidence. That's the how many. It measures the scale, the frequency, all the patterns. Think of it like this. One gives you the heart of the story, the other gives you the scope of the problem. And to build a truly rock-solid case, you absolutely need both.
So how do they get that big picture data? A lot of the time, it comes from large-scale structured surveys. This lets them gather the same kind of information from thousands of people, so they can measure specific traits and behaviors and see who's most vulnerable across a huge population. And trust me, these questions are anything but random. They are laser-focused on measuring very specific things. We're talking about stuff like financial literacy, right? How well do you understand investing? Or digital literacy? How savvy are you online? They even measure things like overconfidence, which is a huge bias scammers love to exploit, and risk tolerance. All of these are key psychological factors that help predict who's most likely to fall for a scam.
But it's not just about surveys. They also go straight to the source. They mine the digital trace evidence directly from platforms like WhatsApp and Telegram. By crunching the numbers on interactions and feedback logs, they can spot objective patterns of fraud. And that is incredibly powerful, because the data doesn't lie. It shows you exactly what the scammers are doing, no eyewitness needed.
Okay, so now they've got the human stories and the hard data. The investigators are ready to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. This is where they use some really powerful analytical frameworks to basically reverse engineer a super detailed profile of the scammer's entire playbook.
One of their key tools is something called behavioral finance. It's this fascinating field that's a mix of psychology and economics. And what it does is help us understand why we as human beings don't always make perfectly logical, rational financial decisions. And you better believe, scammers know all about our built-in mental shortcuts and how to exploit them.
And these are the exact traps they lay for us. You've got social proof, right? That feeling of, hey, everyone else is doing it. They create that with fake testimonials. Then there's the scarcity bias, that limited time offer that makes you rush.
They prey on our overconfidence, that feeling of, I know a good deal when I see one. And maybe the biggest one of all, loss aversion. That's our fear of missing out, or FOMO, which can be even more powerful than the desire to actually win. It is an absolute masterclass in psychological manipulation.
Then, on top of that, they bring in a criminological perspective, using what's known as fraud theory. And here's the key takeaway. Fraud isn't just random bad luck. It's predictable. Frameworks like the fraud hexagon are basically a checklist for crime. They help identify all the key ingredients that have to be there for a scam to actually work.
And these theories point to some key drivers. It often starts with pressure. Maybe the scammer is buried in debt. Then comes the opportunity, like finding an unlocked door, say, an unregulated platform. The scammer then rationalizes it. They tell themselves, oh, this person deserves it. They've got the capability to pull it off. And finally, there's the arrogance, the belief that they're too smart to get caught. When you line all those up, you get the scammer's entire chain of motivation.
But here's the thing. The investigation doesn't stop with these classic frameworks. Because in the fight against digital crime, investigators now have a brand new partner, a really powerful one.
And that partner is artificial intelligence. This is where AI and machine learning become total game changers. So here's how it works. First, researchers collect massive, and I mean massive, amounts of data on user behavior. Then they use that data to train an algorithm. They're basically teaching it what a scam looks like online. Once it's trained, the AI can detect those suspicious patterns in real time and flag potential scams instantly. It becomes this digital bloodhound that can monitor millions of interactions at a speed and scale no human team could ever hope to match.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got human stories, we've got hard statistical data, we have psychological profiles, and now we have AI analysis. So, how does all of this come together to actually stop fraud? Well, it all gets combined into one single comprehensive master plan.
And the foundation of this master plan is a really smart research principle. It's called triangulation. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You come at the problem from lots of different angles, and if all your data points to the same conclusion, you know you're onto something real.
It's all about getting a complete picture of the fraud. You take the deep, rich insights from the human stories, you combine them with the broad statistical patterns from the quantitative data, and you layer on the hard, objective evidence from AI and data mining. What you get is a full, 360-degree view of the crime. Each piece of evidence makes the other pieces stronger.
And that right there is the ultimate payoff. Because the goal isn't just to write a report about the problem, it's to actually solve it. This integrated, triangulated approach gives platforms and law enforcement the intel they need to build way smarter, multi-layered defenses. It's about detecting scams before they even happen, protecting users, and finally, being able to fight back effectively.
So, the playbook to fight fraud is written, but it leaves us with one last big question. In this digital world that's changing by the second, is it gonna be enough? The scammers are always innovating, always finding a new angle. It's this relentless game of cat and mouse. And the real question is, will this incredible new playbook be enough to finally get one step ahead and actually stay there?